Okay, so I'm gonna continue the video. Case in point, trying something new. My mom just called, and that's why I had to stop the video, and my phone was on, and yeah. So my neighbor's doing renovation right now, and I don't have a sound studio or anything like that, and I'm using my phone to control the camera and whatnot. So, anyways, I'll continue into what I was talking about before, which was contemplation with others, contemplation as a dialogue, and how that works. And I'm gonna say yes, because like I said, during discussion with other people, whether it's an academic discussion or a personal one or what have you, I think there could be moments of realization. I suppose for me that feeling, that eureka moment, that realization, that growth, that learning, it feels like contemplation. It feels like what happens, I suppose, when I contemplate and when I meditate and when I'm mindful. And I find that those kind of feelings occur the most with contemplative practices. So maybe that's why I'm associating it that way. So again, I'll leave it at that. At 6:44, he says, "Why no simple singular definition? Why not? Yes, there's so much to it, but could you not integrate and distill what might be for you the essence of contemplation? Yes, there's a lot to think about, and this program is giving you a lot, but we are also offering you the opportunity to reflect on and integrate all this material. But I can see that this assignment and your oral narrative here is giving you an opportunity to work through this material." Great. Yeah, I don't know why it was so hard for me to come up with a singular definition. It's a good question. I think even while I was doing this video, I'm learning and I'm growing right now, and I really love these moments in this program where it's philosophical, it's cognitive, it's spiritual. There's so many reflection and mental exercises. My brain is just firing nonstop, and I get to think about so many things without judgment, without being afraid that I'm going to be judged, or that it's going to be too radical, or what I'm going to say or what I'm going to do is going to be misconstrued in some way. And that's so liberating. I think as adults, we carry that around with us no matter where we go. I couldn't have even imagined doing an audio clip and putting it up on the SoundCloud website. I mean, it's not a private video. There's other people who can listen to it if they want. I'm planning on doing this with this video as well. And whether people judge me for it or whether they don't understand it, I'm not too worried about it, which I don't think I could have said before, because some of these thoughts and some of these ideas and some of the things that I'm saying right now, some of it's very personal, and before this program, I think I would have been petrified. I would have never even dreamed of doing this. But yeah, I think I'm still in the process, and I'm still figuring my way and what it means for me and how I want to interact with this material. So maybe that's why. Maybe that's why I'm still struggling with the singular definition. Perhaps it hasn't settled for me. Maybe it's still too new, and I don't know. I don't know yet. So if I don't know what contemplation or contemplative practices are for me, how can I define it? Because that definition is in flux. It's still changing for me. So, yes, I like that answer. I like that answer. That's going to be my answer. I don't know. It's still changing. At 7:02, he says, "I agree. This word has a lot of weight and can have many meanings." Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go on to 7:40, so 7 minutes 40 seconds. Charles has got a few things, so maybe I'll read all of it and then I'll comment on it. The feeling you get or the sense of being by playing sports, being in the zone. So that's what I was talking about before, about different ways of contemplating and being mindful. I think you are onto something here. So what is going on when you are in the zone? Is it thinking, feeling, experiencing, perceiving? Yes, you are focused. So is contemplation simply concentration? Or is there something more? Yes, I think it's definitely thinking, feeling, experiencing, and perceiving, and I am focused, but there is something more. So yes, there is something more. There's a moment from my childhood when I was in middle school, right around junior high sometime, probably grade 9, maybe 10. I used to play baseball, and I loved it. I just loved it. I love going on that mound. I love pitching. And I remember there was a tournament, and my coach didn't really use me as a starter much, but he did use me as a closer, especially after this happened. So I was pretty much the closer. The game was on the line. It was one of those kind of moments, right? Like out of a movie. It was near the end of the game, or it was the last inning. I don't remember now. But it was near the end of the game. There's like 2 outs. Runner, like, bases are loaded, and he had to change the pitcher, so he put me up there, and it was nerve-wracking, right? The game was literally riding on my shoulders, and I trusted my teammates, and I went up there and I'm like, you know what, I got nothing to lose. I'm gonna do the best I can. And I remember that was probably one of the first moments that I remember this clearly, where I felt so much calm and focus, right? That zone. Almost like everything else didn't exist. I couldn't hear anything else. And you see the cliche in movies and whatnot. And it was that moment. And it's just burned into my brain. So, and then since then, and oh, by the way, we won the game, and I struck the guy out and whatnot, so it was good. But ever since then, I crave those moments of clarity and zen, right? I don't know how to describe it. And I think contemplation, meditation, mindfulness, these practices help me get there without such a situation being created artificially, right? I can't go back on that mound. I can't set up a game so that all those things are riding on that those few pitches that I'm going to make. So day to day, it's hard for me to experience that moment of zen, or that moment of clarity, or that moment of peace. And with meditation and contemplative practices, I find that I can get myself to that spot, or something close to it, or something familiar to that, more regularly. And I find that to be extremely helpful for my well-being and my stress and anxiety management, and so on and so forth. So, yeah. So is contemplation simply concentration, or is there something more? Freeing yourself from baggage and that being liberating. Yes, I think you are onto something. There's a theme that appears repeatedly in the wisdom traditions and religions over the centuries with respect to contemplation. You go beyond or transcend or eliminate all the usual day-to-day discursive stuff that goes on in the thought process. Which brings me back to asking you, does contemplation involve thinking? I think I understand where Charles is going with this. And my gut tells me that, yes, contemplation does involve thinking. And again, in my audio clips, I talk about the depth. Contemplation, I don't think it's just one, like, you're either in it or not. Like, it's not a switch, right? It's not black and white. So there's shades of it. I think when you're thinking and you're contemplating and thinking at the same time, I think it's a little bit different. I think it's more on the shallower end of the spectrum. when you get to that zone where you're just perceiving and just observing, I think that's the deeper level, right, where you really get into that Zen mode. So does contemplation involve thinking? Yes, but I think deeper levels of contemplation, it's a bit blurry. It's a bit less so, I think. I think that's the best I can say that. He also says, yes, as you say, at 9:08, you get an amazing clarity of thought. But is it clarity of thought or clarity of awareness that precedes thinking and stands apart from it? So, clarity of thought or clarity of awareness? I'm going to say both, because it is also clarity of thought, because it's a thought process sometimes, and I have an idea or I have a thought that's made very clear. But sometimes it's also the awareness, because it's bigger. It's not just a singular thought or an idea. Sometimes it's a clarity of awareness, clarity of situation, clarity of more of a meta something that happens. So I'm going to say both. I'm saying both to a lot of things. He also says, yes, it becomes harder and harder to find time to have these moments, but perhaps when we need to intentionally build them into our daily lives as routinized practices, this is exactly what the folks in the wisdom traditions have advocated for centuries. Yes, something we can learn and practice. And I think this is where a lot of the mindfulness comes in sometimes. I don't think, people would be doing it if they didn't feel that it was helpful. So it's helpful, it's doing hopefully good, more good than harm. But at the same time, there's a deeper learning and deeper wisdom there. One thing that I struggle with is, if it helps people, then why does it matter whether it's a bit simplified or it's a bit changed from its original conception, its original dogma, original idea? Because at the end of the day, if it's doing good, shouldn't we advocate it? Shouldn't we simplify it so that a greater number of people can benefit from this? But then the idea of, if it's simplified and if it's changed, it is no longer the same thing. And what does that mean? So again, there's a lot to it. But yeah, it's interesting. So for me, I'm finding that having these moments more and more and more, as I said before, is very helpful. So I'm enjoying it. And then he says, what is the difference between meditation and contemplation? Is meditation one form of contemplation? And yes, I think so. For me, meditation is a form of contemplation. But I think for me, and again, maybe because I'm new to it and because I'm still finding my own way and my definition, for me, meditation is part of contemplation, but both contemplation and meditation I'm defining a lot wider and more loosely, I think. And it's kind of interesting after I talked about the mindfulness and simplification of contemplative practices. But I think I have a very wide definition of both meditation and contemplation, as I've said in my audio clips. So I would say yes to that. So just continuing on this Q&A, it's taking a lot longer than I thought, because I'm already at 14 minutes and I already have a 30-something minute clip. So I think I might only be able to do one on this first first audio comments, but we'll see how this goes. At 10 minute 12 seconds, Charles says, I can totally understand you feel that meditation was a bit weird. Very common reaction. If you're going to practice meditation, I'd suggest finding a practice that appeals to you, one that has an established history. Lots of untested woo-woo out there. And then practice regularly. That is the key. Daily practice over a long, months and years period of time. Yes, a lot of peace from meditative practices. I'm happy you have found the guided meditation in the program helpful. And yeah, I mean, I agree with everything here. Um, uh, One thing that kind of is triggered by this comment is that I tell my students this with meditation. I say the same thing with finding counseling. A lot of my students need or want to talk to counselors. They're stressed out. I mean, that's usually the biggest one: anxiety, stress management, some depression, some other stuff like sleep issues and whatnot. I think it's about finding the right fit. There's too many kinds of people, there's too many situations and too many different circumstances for us to be saying this will work, right? Like we cannot just say there's this one thing, it's the magic bullet, it'll work for everything. So even within counseling, even within contemplative practices, I think there's certain practices that will work and that will resonate with different people differently. So finding that sweet spot, I think, is the key here. For me, guided meditations right now is what works. I find it harder to just sit there, whether with just music or gong, but I'm getting there. That's becoming easier and easier as I do more meditation. But especially in the beginning, guided meditation definitely was something that I needed to do. So again, my definition of it is evolving and changing, but that's something that I often recommend to others and my students and whatnot as well. So that's an interesting thought. Okay, speaking of sweet spot, at 10:33 he says, finding that sweet spot or zone where you can really go deep can sometimes take time and effort. At other times, it comes easily. Just be aware of that. Keep practicing. Yeah, and I definitely agree. I think some days I can get into that sweet spot just almost effortlessly. You just slip into it. Other times it's such a struggle. It's such a struggle that, yeah. So, yeah, no, I agree. It depends. Okay, so at 10:39 he says, the Mass in church, the moments of silence, the chanting, the religious practice, the act of being in a religious ceremony. Yes, again, I think you are really onto something here. The combination of these factors can lead to contemplation. I would encourage you to explore this experience dynamic more fully, perhaps write about these experiences in detail. That's an interesting thing. I hadn't really thought about that, really, but that's, yeah, because